Welcome to Attican Plays Workers and Resources, Soviet Republic. All right, hi, this is Attican, and welcome to part 4 of our second playthrough of Workers and Resources, Soviet Republic. Now, in part 3, we set up our food and alcohol businesses. We started supplying our city with food and alcohol and exporting the excess. And now in this one, we're going to continue to grow our population because we haven't built out our full module that's supposed to support the food and the distillery. So we are not getting as maximum production out of that. We are still even short people on our refinery. We could still have more people in there. So early in this episode, pardon me. Early in this episode, I'm going to focus on recruiting some more immigrants. And I'm going to go for the Soviet immigrants for two reasons. The one obvious one, we don't have any dollars. Used all the dollars in the original build. And two, I don't want sick and uneducated people. And that's what you tend to get from the using the dollars to get third world immigrants. You get an unusually large amount of people who are unhealthy and need to really spend time with the doctors, and a lot of uneducated people. And our education system is being pushed pretty hard already. So here we have a fire out there in the field. We can't do anything about that. That's the original construction office that I put down when this playthrough first started. So in order to minimize the damage of it, we are going to sell off all the vehicles out of there, and then we can just let the construction office go, because and actually at this point we don't even need it, because we won't be doing any terraforming out in that area that's out there at the Kaizina oil fields. We won't be doing any terraforming out there for the foreseeable future. It won't be too long till we'll come back in and probably bring the oil over from Molna, and there'll be some work to do over in this area, but we can rebuild our construction office when that time comes. But in order to minimize the loss, we wanted to sell off all those vehicles first and get the money back for them. Then we can just let the building go. No harm, no foul. In fact, we actually end up with some cash on the deal. But we will have to come back later and spend it, I'm sure, but it'll be way down the road. So again, the fire's out here in the oil field. Right now the plan is you let them burn and you fix them. That's all you can do. Eventually you might go out there and actually build out a city with a fire station and try to get fire support for that whole oil field. That would be an interesting thing to do, and we'll look into that later. There's a lot more important things to do than that. You do step backwards a bit when you have the fires. It costs you something, but it's not a huge deal. All right. So what we want to do now is think about, what do we need to do to cut down our costs. Now, we are not importing any food. We're not importing any alcohol. That's great. We are importing oil because we've now built up our oil refinery to the point where it is outpacing our oil production, and we cannot keep enough oil in there to keep that thing going the way we want it to. So we are importing oil. That's fine. We make good money on it. We can make, of course, better money if we weren't importing the oil. So we'll work on that when we have the opportunity. In this particular episode, what we're going to focus on now, because we built food and alcohol, we're now going to go out and set up farms, and we're going to start growing crops, and we're going to set up a train line to deliver those crops into that warehouse that we set up in the last episode just for that purpose. So we'll have a large train of crops pulling into a warehouse that's then going to feed directly into the food factory and the distillery, and they're going to make their product and feed them into another warehouse, which then feeds a train that ships them off for export. And the original train with the crops will just keep unloading till it's empty, and then it'll go back and get some more crops. So we hope to get eventually into a mode where we've got constant flow of crops coming up there to our food and distillery, so we're not importing any crops. And here's an interesting thing. It looks like they have reversed the signals, because now if you put the signals where your signal is to the right-hand side of the track, that's the one way going in that direction. So now it looks like they're all set up really to drive on the right. Before, they were kind of set up to drive on the left, and I'm a right-hand driver, so I was actually putting them on there kind of backwards in order to get all my trains to drive on the right. But so I went through here and actually redid all these signals. I think it's a change they've made in the recent changes they made with the pathing and the signals, that they're now right-hand drive. It just certainly looks like it. So I went back and all the old ones were working the way they originally had. So if you had an old one on there, it worked one way, and a new one worked a different way. So I went in and took all these signals out and replaced them with new ones, because it's just kind of confusing to have them work opposite ways. So see there, if I put it on the right, that's a right-hand drive. If I put this one on our left, which will be the right for it, that's a right-hand drive. I think that's a change. So that's going to take some adjustment. All right, so here I'm starting that process of bringing in immigrants. So we're going to bring in immigrants, and there's no need, unless you have a specific need for a university grad, just go ahead and get the standard immigrants, 5,000 rubles per 10, and you will get some university grads in that mix. And typically you'll get enough to staff what you need. So your basic, to man be your doctors, to be your teachers. That's really all we need right now, are doctors and teachers as far as university grads. Everybody else we need to have at a level 1 education, a basic education, so they are qualified to work. So we're going to go in and fill in some of these. Some of the flats were a little low because we ran out of money at times when we were building them, and we didn't get a full 105, which is what we were shooting for in our original setup. And so we're going to go ahead and put some more and more people in there. We have a good infrastructure here that can handle it, and we're being very efficient in the way we do the downtown area. The food, clothing, electronics, meat is being distributed very efficiently because we can put a lot of people in there at one time. And we've got the bus system to get people down there. So it's just a matter now of let's get more and more people into our system, particularly any of the flats that are a little low. Pump them up a little bit so they can walk over there, work in that refinery, and continue to make us bigger and bigger oil or fuel and bitumen exports. So I'll go through that process for a bit, and then we're going to go into setting up the farms. Now, one thing you can see here for sure, our money is getting much better. We have food and alcohol industries and bitumen and fuel all working, so we're starting to make some money. And decided to go ahead. We've got that one diesel train refueling station up here, up near our oil fields, that is not being supplied from our refinery. So we're going to put a gravel road all the way up to here, kind of parallel to the train track. You could think of it as a service road. And we're going to run that all the way up to that diesel train station. And that way we can set up a tanker truck to haul fuel up there and start filling up that station, so that we won't be importing fuel up there either. So that means that we shouldn't have any fuel imports right now. We won't have any fuel imports on our map anywhere once we get this one set. And that is to say, after that truck has had a chance to make a few runs. That's a long haul, so it's going to have to do some work to catch up and get ahead, where it's actually filling up that train's fueling station faster than we can use the fuel. But there's only one train running on that line, so, and it actually has two spots it could get fuel. So it's not a huge usage up there. But so we can go ahead and set this train up to, or this this tanker truck, to fill yourself up with fuel and run up there to that fueling station and unload everything, and just keep doing that. And as I said, let's eliminate all the fuel imports. Okay, so now it's time to think about where do we want to put farms. There's beautiful flat land up there. I'm actually going to stay away from that a little bit. I picture this city continuing to grow, and I want to leave some space there. I don't want to crowd it with farms. And we can have our farms because they're not going to have any people. Assuming we're willing to accept the risk of fire, we can have our farms way out in the country. So we can build a big old agro farm out here. And that's just what we're going to do. We're going to build up an agro farm with 12 fields. Originally wanted to put as many big fields in there as I could, and they really didn't fit well. That land is a little bit uneven. I decided to go in and try to, well, first of all, put down another construction office because we're too far away from the one we have near our city. So put down another one, fill it up with excavators and bulldozers so we can do some quick terraforming without paying for it. And I decided to kind of try to flatten the land out some and using the steel mill approach. And it really it got to be a frustrating exercise. I said, I kind of passed on the great farmland to go down here to so-so farmland, but that's okay. I wanted to show how you can move this stuff a long distance and still be effective with it. So, and the first thing I did here, I'm looking at that, I'm thinking that water looks oily. Is there potentially more oil here? But there isn't. And this is another example of how great it is to look for your resources at night, because it just shines. I mean, it's just obvious where there's nothing there because we're getting red everywhere. During the day, that's not quite as obvious, but at nighttime is a great time to look for iron ore, coal ore, and oil. So we're going to pick a spot and build out our farm. As I said, put 12 farms around it and set it up with a farm and a silo and a warehouse. And I'm going to kind of go through this pretty quickly and just show you what we're doing. It's not the most interesting build in the history of the planet, but just to show you what's going on and how I've got it set up, and then we'll talk about it for a minute. So let's just move ahead a little bit. I will say this. I am looking at the grid lines to see where's a basically flat spot, because I certainly don't want to go to a ridiculous spot that's just all mountains and stuff. So when you look at the grid lines and you see mostly white, that's a pretty good sign. I usually look more for the color than I do for the pattern of the grid lines. But if you see mostly white like that, you're in pretty level territory. Where it turns kind of the rusty color or the brown, that's where you're getting into the slope. So you can see there's some slope around us, but we should be able to work around that. So let's go through this pretty quickly. It's mildly boring. And before I speed it up, let me just say I did kind of build a road out and then a road across, and then I built farms up the road on both sides, and then a crossing road with farms on one side of it. But then the key thing here is to have the silo where we can store a fair amount of grain, and that's going to be directly connected with a factory connection to the farm. And then it's going to have another factory connection off the silo off the right-hand side as we're looking at it to a warehouse. And that warehouse, of course, has a a train station, depot, whatever you want to call it, a platform in it. And we're going to connect it up so that we can take our crops straight through the silo into the warehouse and load them up on a large train and ship them up there to our refinery Ropi. And that way we won't have to import so many crops for our food and alcohol. All right, so I've sped this up, but not as much as usual. So I started out with large fields and decided that at first I tried this technique of kind of flattening out a big area with the steel mill and kind of got bored doing it. So actually changed my mind here and said, okay, why don't we just do medium fields? Since first of all, we don't really know what the right answer is yet. I haven't done the optimization study to say, here's the best way to do your farms. I haven't heard of anyone else who's done that either. So in the absence of any facts or any real knowledge, I thought it would be just as well off to go with the mediums. And here we had a fire, had to replace a crucial pump, had to run the pipelines through that. By the way, I'm running this on a fast forward, but it's not the super fast that I usually use. It's fast enough. It'd be nice if I could play this fast, but I don't know. My head, I think, would spin if I had to. But I'm basically just trying to build some flat land out here. And like I said, I just got tired of it after a while and said, go medium. So here's the road coming across, and the big ones still aren't fitting. And I said, all right, good enough. So we're going to run 4 medium farms straight up that road away from the agro farm, and we're going to do the same thing on this other side. Now, of course, the key with these farms is make sure that you have road access, otherwise your machinery will never go there to work them. No road, no action. So, well, here comes our 4 coming up the other side. And making sure that we've got the road connections everywhere. That one just won't quite make it, so we take it out, put it back in a little bit further back. There we go. So there's 8 of our farms. Now we're going to run a little road down here just to give us a line to go by. And we'll run a couple of fields out this way, and actually switch to small to finish it off. But I did want to have 12 because I'm going to have 4 harvesters, 4 trucks to haul the grain in from the field, and 4 tractors to sow. So it just makes sense to get cycles going in sets of 4. So 4 times 3, 12. And so here I'm running a line out of the warehouse down there near the silo, and it's going to run straight up there in a kind of a straight line, run up the like so, and eventually hook up with the line that we had originally set, just sort of set a marker for, a small piece of track that we had put out there coming out of that warehouse that we're right now not using, the one that's going to accept our crops from the field. Right now we're not doing anything with it. So we're just going to run some straight track up through here, still running diesel, and we're just going to cross over this existing track that's actually hauling our food and alcohol out to Karatabag. And this crossover right there was super easy, but there's a little bit of hills right in here, and this became, I thought, well, I just need to practice because it was just ridiculously hard to make this work and to get this to cross properly. I finally went out to a flatter spot and made the crossing, and then worked my way back in both directions from that crossing in order to get it to work. And I'm not concerned about these tracks. We don't need bridges over this or tunnels or anything fancy, because there's just, right now we're just running a couple. It'll be 2 trains. They'll rarely, if ever, get there at the same time. They could run for years and never affect each other. So there's no point in spending the money now on bridges or tunnels or anything like that. We're just going to get the track to cross over. and I honestly had a horrible time with it. I still need more practice on the terraforming. I keep saying I'm getting better, and I think I am, but I don't know if I could prove it. Certainly not by any of this. And I'm going to speed this up because it's embarrassing. Okay, so I just blew right by the rest of that. Finally got the line connected. Now I'm out here way out near our oil fields, part way up, because we want to put in a high power line. We want to run a high powered line over to our farm, and because we need power for everything to work out there. And what I'm doing here is I picked this spot that's out along our original track, but over where all that coal is. So that and we know that coal, my plan right now, that big coal plant there, the big coal field, multiple coal deposits in the place. If you think of the first playthrough, we called it the area called Mansk. But in that area, there's a lot of coal. And there's going to be coal export coming out of there, and there's going to be power stations. So the plan is to put that area right in there, we just crossed over, as the eventually be our power plants. So I wanted to be aware of that and run this line down kind of below it as we're looking at it, to make sure that we didn't mess it up later on, because that area right above that is where those power lines are. That's going to be, I believe, once we have our economy really rocking and rolling, that's going to be a city that has power plants in it and coal export. And the reason I say once we have our economy rocking and rolling is you do not want to be importing anything inland, so to speak, away from your borders in this game, particularly playing on harder levels, because it just the cost of the imports is just staggering compared to what it is right on the border. So that's why that our original city, Refinery Ropi, is right there on the border, right where it needs to be. So now we're going to build a high power line over. We'll put in a transformer to step it down to medium, and then we'll run medium line over to that substation that I just put in, and then we'll have power for our farms. All right, so there we go. Now we have power running out to the farms, where the agro farm, the silo, and the warehouse are. And once we have that confirmed, I say we have power, and I might be lying. Okay, we have power at that switch. Oh, I see what's wrong. See the extra white ones? Those are the mediums that didn't get, the medium power lines that didn't get built. So we just need to go down and say, okay, fund that. Build those medium power lines for us. There we go. Now we have power for the agro farm, the silo, and the warehouse. And again, these farms, 0 people. So this is going to be all automated, and we're going to build out the farm and buy, as I said, 4 tractors, 4 trucks, and 4 harvesters, and have them go out and start working on our 12 fields. There you can see it found the 12 fields. It recognizes them as being in its purview. So it'll automatically work all those, and all these vehicles that we buy, as long as we leave them on automatic, they will just automatically work at the command of the agro farm, which means that the tractors will go out and plant 4 fields. Then those will start growing. Once they've completed growing, the harvesters will go out and start harvesting 4 fields. And as they're harvesting, the trucks will go out and plop themselves out there and start bringing the crops back into the farm, which will then go to the silo, which will then go to the warehouse, which will then go to our train, which will be out there eventually, and then that train will take them off to our food and alcohol industries in Refinery Ropi. So that's the plan for our farming. Our farm is all set up, and what we're going to do is watch that, see how that goes, and see if we want to plant some more farms out there. We really don't need to yet. Now I'm heading into frustration number 2. What I want to do here, first of all, this little line right there is so that we can use that same depot to bring the train all the way down there to the farm. So I'm not quite yet to my frustration part. This part actually was pretty easy. So I'm just going to put a two-way signal there because that's an intersection with the line, and put two-way there in case we have that crossover, which eventually dies. And then down here, we've got 2 pieces of track crossing each other. So I'm going to put a two-way signal on all 4 corners, so to speak, so that the block is just literally that little piece in the middle. And this works because there's only going to be one train going left to right, one train going up and down. So the up and down train from that perspective will be our crop train, and then the left to right train will be our food and alcohol export train. So now we should be able to go out here and fire up a nice big, notice our money too. Again, we're starting to have an economy now. We actually have something going with our food, alcohol, fuel, and bitumen exports. So we're going to get a diesel train, and we're going to use box cars, and we're going to have a full train of box cars. I like big trains. And so we're going to set that baby up to go to the warehouse, load yourself full of crops, go to the warehouse in the city near the food and distillery, and unload until you're completely empty, and then go back and do it again. And we're going to go ahead and set it up so that it's out there ready, but we're a ways away. We're probably months away from having crops out there that we actually need the train. But I want to be able to set it up and kind of forget about it, because it should literally run on automatic and have no problems. And you can probably see our one risk here. The one thing we're kind of saying, well, we're just going to have to live with that we don't have fire protection out there. So again, eventually that's another area where we may go out and build a little community to primarily to do fire protection. I mentioned that we might do that down here in this area we're looking at right here, where the oil fields are, the big oil field. We may go down there and build a little city just so we can fire protect some of those critical investments we have. It'd be so much easier than having to go out and repair them and rebuild them all the time. So I'm just waiting here for the oil train to get a full load and leave so that I can tell the train that's in the depot to take off. Because right now I've just got that one track running right through the station. I could, of course, build a track around the station. That would probably be a good move. And if we were running lots and lots of trains and really using that depot to supply trains all over the place, that's what we would do. We would have alternative paths for coming out of there. So there we go. Now we've got our crop train, if you will, ready to go, and it's just waiting on its chance to move ahead once the oil train gets far enough out down the road. And let's speed it up, and we'll follow it on into the warehouse. So here comes our crop train pulling into the warehouse, and it's going to just sit there for quite a while our crops are growing and when we start harvesting. So we've got our crop delivery set up, except for one thing. We need a diesel train station, one of those refueling stations, up here on this line. And unfortunately, if I'd thought ahead and really had my thinking cap on, I would have put one station, that one that we already have, I would have put it in a way that we could, use that line again. But I decided to go ahead and put in a second one here, and it's no big deal. You put it in, then you, run a truck over to it to fill it up, keep it full of fuel, and then you're good to go. So here we've got yet another fire out here, but this one actually happens to be near us, which is great. This is within our fire station's purview, so he could go out there and save that fueling station before it blows up on us. So good job, first responders. And we put out a fire, and now we get to go to my other piece of frustration, which was trying to put in the diesel train station, fueling station in here in this area. And I really misjudged how big that hill is. The difference between where the cursor is right there killing that track and down to that warehouse is a bigger drop off than I thought. So basically what I'm going to do here is try to put this in and realize that it's way too high for the low track, and which I don't understand. It's sitting there at basically the same level as the track that was already put in. So this is where the game makes it really hard on you. Some of this, and I know this is frustration people have, and a lot of it's just we just have to get better at doing it. But I'm trying, but it is not the easiest task in the world to lay this track. It really isn't. I've actually spared you guys having to watch me do some other ones, and partly out of embarrassment and partly because I just, I don't want to put a bad face on the game because I think it's just an awesome game. But this is a challenge, trying to get this to work. Basically what I ended up having to do is actually dig out a flat spot so that I could get that little fueling station and the track in there together. Then that put me down so low I actually put in a little bridge to get back up to the level where the rest of the track is. So again, let's hit the fast forward through that. I'll fast forward, but not super fast, so you can kind of watch it. And if you want to slow it down on YouTube and watch it, feel free. And if you have some ideas of how I could have done better, it wouldn't offend me one bit if you put them in the comments. But again, this is not easy, and it's particularly not easy for me because this kind of thing has never been my strong suit anyway. I just want to add a comment right here. If you look at that, that looks to me like it should have been able to run a track up through there. It's a kind of a gradual increase in slope. It just seemed like that should have worked. Couldn't make it work. Finally, ended up flattening it out with a flat of all things, and putting in a bridge to go up there. It's ridiculous that I put a bridge there. I know it. If I didn't have a lot of money, I wouldn't have done it. But I was getting frustrated at this point. So sorry about that. But there it is. We got a bridge coming out of there so that now we have a diesel station. Now what we want to do is hook it up with a road so that we can run a truck out to it. And this is where, and I had noticed this before. I knew I'd have to come back to it eventually and fix it. But you'll notice that our food and alcohol truck that does our exporting out to Karadabog, it's going to sit there and sit right across that track the whole time it's waiting to load up. And it does not, we do not create the food at a rate that causes it to just go in, load, and take right back off. So there's a delay there. And the fortunate thing is our workers will just walk right through. They'll walk right over the train. I guess they're crawling over it or whatever they're doing, but they will find a way to get to work. However, when we start running fuel up to that fuel station with a truck, that truck just going to sit there and wait on red flashing lights until that train leaves. And unless we're going to micromanage the train and move it out of the way every time, and we are not, then this needs to be fixed. So at the end of this one, the next thing that we'll need to do is figure out a way to either bridge or tunnel across over to the other side of the road, other side of the tracks, so to speak, so that we can get over on the other side of the warehouse and be able to effectively fight fires over there and deliver fuel over there. So this is our fuel delivery truck, and as it goes over here, we're going to notice that it's just going to, right now it's going to the refinery to get this fuel. Its load. So once it gets loaded, it'll go over to the warehouse and try to get over there to that fueling station. And that's when we're going to see the fail. So I'll deal with in the next episode, or maybe off camera, and show you what I've done. But at any rate, in this one, what we did was we're building. See, here we go. See, it's just stopped up, and it's not going to go. It's just going to sit there. I even tried putting a road further back away from the train. Maybe I can put a signal in there and make it work. I don't know, but I'll work on it. But anyway, the principle we're following is set up the business and then supply it with the raw material. Now, the oil refinery we did backwards this time. We did the oil first and then the refinery. And later on, we're going to have more oil because now we've built our refinery up to it's really efficient and it's burning our oil too fast. But now we've got our crops set up and growing. We've got the train ready to bring them in here to our food factory and our distillery. We've got good workers. We've built up our workforce. We've got happy people. We're getting very few, if any, escapes. Life is pretty good right now in our little country. By the way, keep sending me suggestions for names. I've only gotten one suggestion so far. Send me suggestions for the name of our country so we can call it something. So you can see we're building quite the little city here, and it's a very efficient city because of the way, in terms of how we're using those services and those central services. I'm very pleased with that so far. So let's stop right here and recognize that now we have our crops added into the mix, and then next time when we come back, we will look at, I think maybe coal and power would be the next way to go, or clothing. Let me give that some thought. If you have a comment which way you'd like to see me go, let me know. We need to get off that power dependency, obviously, and we just want to get off the power dependency, and we also want to make our own clothing so that we're not having to import clothing into our shopping center. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope it'll help you become a better player, and I hope you'll join us for our next Workers and Resources Soviet Republic video. Thank you.